Hi, welcome. This is the joint NSF NIH COVID-19 response presentation. We have colleagues here from both NIH and NSF. Today on our panel is myself. I'll be the moderator. My name is Matthew Olson. I'm with the NSF in the Bio Directorate in the Division of Environmental Biology. Also in NSF, we have Joanne Tornow, who's the Assistant Director of Bio. We have Manju Hingarami, who's in Molecular and Cellular Biology. And we have Joanne Schisler, who is also a Program Director in Integrative and Organismal Systems. Oh, and Manju is also a Program Director. From NIH, we have the Director of the Office of Extramural Research, Dr. Michael Lauer, and we also have the Deputy Director of the Office of Extramural Research, Dr. Jody Black. So I think what we're going to start out with is Dr. Joanne Tornow will give us a short presentation about the NSF response for COVID-19.
Great, thanks, Matt. And let me share my screen here. So I want to thank you all for the opportunity to chat with you about what's been happening at NSF in response to COVID-19. Let me see if I can advance here now. So as Matt already said, here's the folks from NSF who are in attendance at on the panel, prepared to field your questions. Today we're going to cover the guidance NSF has provided related to the coronavirus pandemic and COVID-19, and touch on how we are supporting the response, and then hopefully we'll have a lot of time for Q&A. So this will be a short presentation. So obviously, this is a challenging time. We've heard from numerous community members at NSF and societies about lab closures, stresses associated with transitions to virtual classrooms, determining new methods of supporting students, loss of administration time and resources to COVID-related campus-wide planning. We know that these are affecting and will continue to affect the research enterprise by straining resources, ending or delaying planned research and or impeding training and education. And we're committed to being responsive to the community in these difficult times. During this time, NSF has opened for business, although we are doing this all virtually. NSF program staff are on duty. We are continue to review proposals, including a set of rapid proposals related to COVID-19, which I'll touch on in a moment. And we have been holding virtual panels for the merit review. So thanks to all of those who are in the audience who are participating in the review process and allowing us to continue our work. In bio, our core programs have no deadlines. We share that with our engineering directorate, but otherwise are unique in the foundation. So we're ready to accept your proposals at any time when you are ready to submit them. For those solicitations that have deadlines, many have been extended. And on the next slide, I'll show you, we have a website where there's a list of all of the solicitations at NSF with the deadlines that have been extended. So here's just a quick screenshot of the NSF-wide coronavirus page. The URL is at the top. This is regularly updated and contains all of the NSF issued information related to COVID-19, including our guidance for proposers, awardees, and panelists, information on our facilities and centers, guidance on human subject and vertebrate animal research, and as I just mentioned, a list of solicitations whose deadlines have been extended in response to changes across the research community. I think as you scroll down the page, you get to all, but here somewhere, right here, impact on existing deadline dates. Part of NSF's guidance, really the main thrust of NSF's guidance, is to give awardees as much flexibility as possible to support the research while putting the utmost importance on the health and safety of our community, the researchers, our postdocs, graduate students, etc. One of the documents that's on the site I just showed you outlines NSF's implementation of the OMB memorandum, that number there, M20-17. This guidance outlines the flexibility NSF is providing on salaries, travel, and closeout, amongst other topics. Like much of the information, this is regularly updated, so please continue to check back on that website and the other documents. As the situation continues, we continue to get additional guidance from the Office of Management and Budget, and we accordingly are updating our guidance to our awardees in response to any change in guidance. And I do want to point out the last bullet on this slide about documenting. It is really important that as this proceeds, that you and your institutions continue to document any costs that you're accruing, so that as we emerge on the other side of this, you'll have all of the appropriate records and cost documentation. So for the awardees in the audience, we really urge you all to check the due dates. When are your annual reports due? When are your renewals due? We have provided a 30-day extension on any annual report that was due between March 1st and April 30th, just as a reminder to you. Try and plan as best you can, given the circumstances. Yeah, that's right. Given the circumstances, and contact your managing program officer. Sorry, I've skipped ahead on my notes. I want to mention here about the no-cost extensions. We have two types of no-cost extensions at NSF. The first one is what we call a grantee-approved no-cost extension. This is something that your institution simply notifies NSF that you intend to extend the award for up to a year. This has always been the case. This is not a special circumstance that we have instituted in response to the current situation, but it's certainly a flexibility that I think is very valuable at this time. Your organization's grants office simply needs to inform NSF that you intend to use it by sending a notification to NSF via research.gov. The second kind of extension that you can request is one that does require an approval by NSF. You can request, again, through your grants office at research.gov, you can request a second no-cost extension, and I can tell you certainly at NSF and in bio, our program officers will be very accommodating to requests for a second year of no-cost extension. Sorry, okay, and now here are the notes about your checking on your due dates for when your reports are due, when your projects are due to end. We encourage you really to try and plan the best you can given the circumstances. Contact your managing program officer if you have questions. We have received some questions from awardees who would like to donate materials purchased with grant funds, the personal protective equipment. There is guidance that is on the NSF webpage, again, on that coronavirus page that I showed you at the beginning, which is in accordance with guidance we have received from the Office of Management and Budget that would provide you with the information that you would need to make those donations in accordance with applicable laws. So finally, as I noted at the beginning of the presentation, now as we think about funding opportunities, NSF is accepting and reviewing proposals for rapid grants. This is our mechanism to provide funding rapidly in a short turnaround time for very time-sensitive kinds of research. We put out a Dear Colleague letter to the community in March to indicate our interest in receiving these proposals. We have received over upwards of 3,000 inquiries from the community about rapid proposals across all of NSF, all the directorates and offices at NSF, and we've made over 100 awards to date, running the gamut from understanding the biology of the virus and how it's transmitted to detection, mitigation, and impact on society. So if you do have an idea for a rapid proposal, the email address is shown here to submit your first inquiry. We have a team of program officers across NSF who are fielding all of these inquiries and responding to the PIs in a timely way to determine whether or not it's appropriate for you to submit a full proposal. So, and that's the sort of a summary of the material that I want to present here before we go into the NIH information and the Q&A. Just a reminder of our coronavirus page. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Joanne. Well, we will continue now with a presentation by the NIH, and after this short presentation, which will be about 15 minutes, we're going to open it up to a question and answer session. And I see that a few people have already typed their questions into the Q&A box, and that's how we're going to deal with it. We'll just deal with the questions as they come in. So as you have questions, please just type them into the Q&A box, and we will address them when we finish the next presentation.
Great, Matthew, thank you very much.
Yep,
I'm sharing my screen, and hopefully you now see this. Joanne, Jody, and I spoke the other day, and we thought that instead of our giving you a slide presentation, which to a large extent would be very similar to the presentation that Joanne just gave, we would make a few comments, and I just want to also show you our webpage. To a large extent, we would be saying exactly the same thing, and so that's the reason why I'm not going to go through a formal presentation. I did want to show you, this is our dedicated extramural webpage, Coronavirus 2019 Information for NIH Applicants and Recipients of NIH Funding. And we do have a lot of material here. Hopefully some of you have already looked at this, but in case you haven't, we would ask you to look at it and look at it often. We do have actually a PowerPoint presentation, which to a large extent is very similar to the presentation you just heard. We also have a series of talking points. We have a series of announcements, and I'll just mention a few of these. One is late applications. For applications that were due between March the 9th and May the 1st, we are taking them until May the 1st. Any application that comes in after May the 1st we'll take, but we're not going to be able to review them for the current council round, so those will get deferred. It might make more sense to wait to submit them until later. We have a number of administrative flexibilities that we have implemented and announced to a large extent based on the same OMB memos that NSF is looking at. So we do have notices regarding these flexibilities. We have a special website that is targeted towards animal studies. Our Office of Laboratory Animal Welfare, which, as you know, is a regulatory body that oversees laboratory animal research in conjunction with FDA and USDA, has put together their own dedicated page where there is quite a bit of information. There's been a lot of concerns about clinical trials. Clinical trials represents about 10% of the NIH portfolio. We, on the one hand, the coronavirus clinical trials are going and are going quickly, but the clinical trials in other areas, many of them have halted or have seen dramatic reductions in work. We have our own guidance on NIH-funded clinical trials. We also post guidance that has been put out by the FDA, which we do agree with, and we also have some resources from OHRP, the Office of Human Research Protection. Animal welfare, I already mentioned. Peer review, just like as Joanne for business, we're all working. We're all working from home, but we are all working. peer review meetings are continuing and have continued nonstop with essentially no interruptions from the beginning of the pandemic. However, beginning in the middle of March, all peer review meetings are being handled virtually. Fortunately, we have not had any, and they will continue to be held virtually through at least the summer. We have lots of FAQs, and if you click here, there will be FAQs. They're classified according to a variety of different categories, and we continuously update these FAQs as we hear new ones. One or two of the questions that we get today will translate into either a new FAQ that we'll put up here or a revised FAQ. And then finally, we have a lot going on in terms of funding. All of our funding announcements can be found in the NIH guide, but actually based on the advice of outside stakeholders, what we've also done is we've posted information about COVID-19 related funding opportunities right here on this one-stop shopping. There are a variety of opportunities that are available. Some are supplements to existing grants. Some of them are administrative supplements. Some are what we call competing revisions, which are a bit more involved. Opportunities here for de novo grants. And as you can see, materials continue to be posted here, and you can just get a feeling that there are a lot of these. And if you haven't looked at these already, please do, because we're looking for applications for outstanding work. So to briefly summarize, like NSF, we recognize that this is a period of extraordinary disruption. In the world of coronavirus research, everything is going on warp speed. And in the world of non-coronavirus research, everything has screeched to a halt or nearly to a halt. We know that universities, academic medical centers, and healthcare systems are going through an extraordinarily hard time, and we appreciate that. We're doing everything that we possibly can to offer flexibilities and accommodations within the resources and authorities that are available to us. So I hope you found that helpful. And let me, before closing, let me ask my colleague, Dr. Jody Black, if there's anything else that you would like to bring up for our audience.
No, I think that pretty much covered it. All of our information is on that web page that you can see, and it's updated frequently, so keep looking at it.
Okay, that was great. That was a lot of good information for the community. You know, while you were giving your presentation, Michael, I didn't see the screen change on my screen, but you said you were talking through some different parts of it, so I didn't know. Maybe also our audience. Did you mean to move through some different pages, or was there just
no?
One
I just went through one page and I scrolled up and down because it's a one-stop shopping.
Okay.
All the various topics that I covered, there's material that's available either right on the page itself, or there's a link that takes you to more material. So that's correct. You did not see me switching from different pages because I was only looking at one.
Great. I just wanted to make sure that was clear for our audience. So now we'll go into the question and answer session, and we'll spend the next 40 minutes doing this. So any questions that you have, please type them into the Q&A box, and I see we already have a few backed up. So we'll just move through them as we see them and address them as they come. So the first question is for both NIH and NSF people here. And maybe we can start with NIH with Michael. So the question is, are there opportunities for postdocs to submit proposals for COVID-19 research through the NSF or NIH? And maybe Michael can take it, and then Manju can answer for NSF.
So I'm not aware of any specific announcements that are reaching out to postdocs. There are requests for supplements to existing grants. So for postdocs who are working on existing grants, there may very well be opportunities through their mentors. I should point out that about 3/4 of the postdocs that we support, we support on research grants. So anyone who's got an existing research grant that is potentially topical may submit. We know that postdocs have concerns about time. Their term may be ending, or they feel like their grant may be ending and that they won't have time to complete all their work. So we do have built-in mechanisms that make it easy for them to request extensions.
So for the NSF also, we have ongoing programs, of course, for postdoctoral fellowships, and I think the deadline for the one in biology is in November, and you're certainly welcome to put in a COVID-related research into proposals that you might be preparing for that. The other option is, of course, through your PI who may submit a rapid proposal. There are a lot of PIs who are submitting rapid proposals where the funding is essentially for a postdoc or graduate student. And then what I can do is I can check whether postdocs can be PIs on grant proposals. My general answer is no, but you're welcome to email me and I will specifically find out this answer for you. I should also note that, as Mike said, that PIs could potentially also add a postdoc position to their existing grants, but they have to talk to their program officer before looking at that option.
I think it's also somewhat up to the university and your Office of Research Support about whether you can apply as the PI if you're a research associate. So you might check with your university if you'd like to do that. Okay, let's move on to the next question. So this is specifically for the NSF because it has to do with the GRFP award for graduate students. So how will this impact graduate students? Maybe Joanna, you could answer this one. How will this impact graduate students currently with the GRFP award?
Right, that's a great question. So these GRFPs are 3-year stipends and you'll continue to get paid. And I'm not sure what else you wanted to know. So Manju, do you want to add anything to that?
I can add that the graduate fellows are also eligible to request for no-cost extensions. So any delay in your project and your graduation deadline, you can ask. Joanne mentioned the no-cost extensions earlier, and you're eligible to request that as well as the need arises.
So the next question is about the career deadline, and it asks whether it will change. And I haven't heard that it is going to change. Have either Manju, Joanna, or?
I just looked on the NSF website and it was not one of the opportunities where the deadline changed.
This is, however, a topic that is under discussion internally. And so again, we will advertise the main NSF information page because it does get updated as policies come. Because what we're doing is really trying to be responsive to the needs of the community. So there is a lot of updating going on. I'm sure that's true for the NIH as well.
Okay, so the next question, Joanna, you've been fielding several of these COVID-19 rapid proposals, so maybe you could answer this one. How does the non-medical research fit into the COVID-19 rapid mechanism?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things to remember about NSF is that, you know, in addition to the biology directorate, that we have other directorates in engineering, math and physical sciences, and sociology and behavioral sciences. And so as you can imagine, there's a lot of opportunities to study COVID in terms of, say, modeling or aspects in terms of sociological effects on COVID, or how different groups have dealt with COVID, whether those are rural or urban communities, for example. within bio itself, the way that I like to think about this is that there are a lot of things there are a lot of basic research topics where there are fundamental questions that still need to be answered that NSF is interested in funding. And that can range anywhere from how coronaviruses replicate to different types of immune responses between the different animals that are infected with coronaviruses, to understanding the genetic mechanisms that are responsible for the differences in asymptomatic versus severe diseases. So if you have any questions about that, and if you wonder if your research is appropriate, there is an email at the bottom of the DCL letter. Just email and tell the program officer, give them maybe a paragraph or two about what you're interested in thinking about, and somebody will follow up with you.
Thanks, that was great. Any other comments about that? Okay, the next question is, I think, for the whole panel, so maybe we can have a little discussion about this. The question is, regarding rapid proposals in general, any advice on how we should decide whether we should send our non-medical, non-clinical proposal on SARS-CoV-2 to NSF versus NIH? Are there types of research that will be more suited to one or the other?
Okay, well, why don't I start? So I think that it's important for people to look at the announcements that we have put out because they are fairly specific. We have so-called emergency awards, urgent awards, and I guess you could call them regular awards. So emergency awards are awards that are being funded by the supplemental bills that Congress recently passed. So that includes NIAID, NIEHS, NCAS, NIBIB, NLM, the Common Fund. There are some specific areas that are being covered by the so-called emergency awards. These are going to be processed very quickly. And if you look at the actual announcements, which are on the webpage I showed you, you'll see that the institutes have been fairly specific about the type of things that they are looking for. So I think that would be my best advice. The urgent awards are also processed very quickly, but they're not being funded out of the recent congressional bills. They're being funded out of our standard appropriation. And then our regular awards are everything else.
So,
Jody, any other thoughts?
Yeah, Joanne?
So I think so. The advice would be the advice would be pretty similar for NSF, though. For the rapid mechanism, we have not specified areas of research other than the applicability to understanding the current pandemic situation and ways in which we might address it to, in response to the national need. I think it's important to just keep in mind that that NSF has a particular mission, NIH has a particular mission. Even as we are both gearing up to be responsive here, we do have different responsibilities in the big picture for the scientific enterprise, the federal scientific enterprise, and our efforts are complementary. And I think we do, I think that the same thinking that you use in deciding of where you're going to submit a regular proposal to NIH or NSF in terms of its applicability to the agency applies here as well. Even if you're talking about coronavirus and the COVID-19 pandemic, there are aspects of it that are things that NSF might be uniquely suited to support through bio, but also through engineering or through our computer sciences directorate, or et cetera. And then there's other things that are uniquely appropriate for NIH to be supporting.
Great. Any more comments? I can also say for NSF, just if you have questions about whether it's applicable, just contact a program officer and we'll get you in touch with the right person. And Michael, do you want to mention something about that for NIH? Are there folks to contact?
Well, when in doubt, always contact the program official, and that's important for everything.
Great. That's just the common advice. All right. So let's see. Let's move on here. So this is also for both NIH and NSF, and maybe Joanne, you could start with this one. Are there any options for funding supplements to recover from this period where most expenses were still the same? For instance, salaries that we're paying people, but those people may not be able to make any progress on the research because they can't be in the lab, especially for grants that are currently ending or are in their last year where there's less time to recover.
I'm flipping back and forth on my mute button because yeah, so that's a great question. And of course, we are receiving a lot of questions in that space. And it is also something that we've been discussing internally. And I know there's a conversation really probably in all of the agencies that are supporting active research projects. The reality is that this has affected everybody who has a research, federal support of any sort from the government. As Michael said, the coronavirus research is going at warp speed, but otherwise everybody's research productivity has dropped, and it would be it would be an impossible task really to be able to make everybody whole for the impact that has occurred across the board to all of our grantees. I think that there's an understanding that this is something that has impacted everybody. We will have a different set of expectations with respect to ability to complete the goals of the project. I think that there's a particular conversation around the impact on students. We understand that all of this is happening at the universities, and that there is going to be a more sort of universal kind of guidance around the ability and availability of supplements at when we are able to actually get a sense of the scope. But at the moment, it is not something that I think we can entertain agency-wide, given the real scope of the impact that has occurred. And Michael, I don't know if you would like to add to that.
Yeah, I would say ditto. I mean, we're hearing very much the same anxieties. We don't have the resources to make everybody whole. That's just not possible with the resources that we have available to us. We have called out two areas in which there may be opportunities for administrative supplements to make up for the disruptions. One involves canceled travel and canceled conference. And the other one involves clinical trials. So one of the announcements that's on that webpage where we talk about clinical trials, we do say that on a case-by-case basis, we will consider administrative supplements to make up for unanticipated incurred costs that will be necessary for those clinical trials to be completed. Also, we address this question in our FAQs, and one of the points that we make is that before submitting any kind of request, this is just like before, please talk with your program official. And we're going to need a little bit of time to go by. We're now maybe about a month or a month plus into this shutdown period. We still don't know, when the country is going to be reopening, when research centers are going to be reopening, how long the total period of disruption is going to be. And so at this point, without having that kind of information, it's premature to be requesting supplements for making one whole as a general rule.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think that's a pretty good answer to both of those, or to that question. So let's move on. Again, if you are out there and you have a question, please type it into the Q&A box. We have 20 questions now backed up, so we're going to try to get to them within the next 25 minutes. And if we don't, at least at NSF, we'll try to post a little summary of what's been going on, as well as the slides that we've presented here in our blogs for bio. So the next question is, what's the guidance from NSF and NIH for paying faculty summer salary from existing grants? This seems to be a question at my institute and still uncertain if we will receive our summer salary, even though it comes off of NSF and NIH funded grants. Is there something I can be doing, can my institute do directly to help ensure that they are aligned with NSF NIH rules on this? Jody, do you want to answer that one? We haven't heard from you yet.
Sure, I can answer that one. So NIH will allow salaries to continue to be paid during this time if your institution has policies that pay salaries during things like this from the grants. So if the summer salary is part of your NIH grant award and your institution has a policy that allows salary drawdown when work can't be done for reasons like this, it's fine.
Manju, do you want to answer for NSF?
Sure. The answer is pretty much the same. If your institutional policy allows salaries to be paid off of a grant, NSF will defer to that policy. I should also point out that if your institutional policy is not quite set yet, or you wish to inform your administration, again, on the main NSF page, the OMB guidance is the memorandum from the OMB that refers to these issues is up there, and then also the specific NSF actions or allow what costs are allowed that information is also up there. I should point out that the FAQs are really helpful and very clear, so that it might be helpful to inform your administration about this resource.
All right, thanks. Okay, the next question is about graduate fellowships, and I know we have some in the NSF, and maybe Joanna could answer this question about that. And I'm not sure about the NIH, so either Michael or Jody can chime in. So the question is, I'm currently a junior in my undergraduate degree, and I will be applying to PhD programs and your wonderful graduate fellowships in the fall. They are excellent. Do you anticipate things will still be back to normal by then, or things will be back to normal by then, or what carryover from COVID-19 should we anticipate?
Right. Okay. So with respect to deadlines, I was just checking, and it doesn't look like the deadlines for the graduate fellowships has changed. With respect to each school or each university and their graduate programs, I think that's being left up to individual universities right now. And Manju, is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, I think that's fine. The GRFP page will carry any updates with respect to any changes in deadlines. But again, as was noted earlier, we're trying as best as we can to get the reviews done. And the community has been amazingly responsive to keep the peer review process going. So, so we'll hope to keep that on time as possible.
Are there I'm not sure if there are graduate fellowships at NIH that this would be applicable for. Jody, or could you answer, are there?
We do have programs that support fellowships, but I will ditto what Manju just said. I mean, I can only tell you that my daughter is in college, and she got a note recently from the president of her college saying they hope everything is going to be back to normal by the fall. So I think we're all looking at the same crystal ball.
Okay, that's great. Okay, this is a question specifically for the NIH folks here. Can F32 NRSA fellowships for related work, immunology, vaccine, or aging, for instance, be used for COVID-19 work at this time? And if so, how can that be done?
So I can take that. So the answer is probably yes, but they should call their program officials, because this could be considered a change in scope. It wasn't exactly what was initially planned, but it's close enough to where the program official can approve it. There are other ways, though, to pivot, including asking for supplements. So, but always call the program official and talk through walk through the thinking.
Okay. Sounds good. Let's move on. Maybe, Michael, you could address this one. After May 1st, will the NIH continue to accept regular R series? Are they going to be reviewed as usual?
So the answer to that is hopefully yes. We do plan to continue conducting reviews through the summer and the fall. During the summer, we will be doing all of our reviews virtually. The deadlines will, we have no plans of changing deadlines after May the 1st. Part of the reason for this is that we are dealing with the realities of the fiscal year. So we have to finish all of our reviews and grants management processing by the end of September. So our hope is that we will be able to continue business as usual, at least as regard to receiving and reviewing our grants. You know, one point I bring up, some of you may already know this, but the CIHR, the Canadian Institutes for Health Research, actually canceled their spring competition. So they've essentially, the way they've responded to this is that they've essentially closed their doors and said, come back later. We're not looking at any applications. Right now, I think both of our agencies are continuing. I do think there's one important stress I should point out, which hopefully will not have much of an impact. But as you might imagine, many of our reviewers are physicians or nurses, people who work on the front lines of actually caring for patients with coronavirus. Some of them are being called away from their more academic pursuits to participate in patient care and therefore not available for peer review. As of this point, that has not had a major impact on our work, but that is something that we're watching closely.
Great, thanks. Okay, so the next question again is for NIH. So maybe Jody, you'd like to address this one. Will the K99 Transition to Independence Award period be extended, especially if there's an academic hiring freeze in the coming years?
So yes, we are allowing extensions of those transitions. We're allowing extensions for lots of training periods, and for our early stage investigators, you might be familiar with our early stage investigator policy. So we are allowing extensions across all of those trainee and early stage investigator processes. All you have to do is ask.
Excellent. Okay, Michael, maybe you could field this one. Will there be a new FOA for COVID funding from NIAID, or is it best to submit a standard R01 simply noting the NOSI?
Well, yeah. So the NOSI is there are multiple NOCs, we call them. So there are multiple NOCs, or notices of special interest, from NIAID. Most of them are for supplements, but at least one of them, if not more, is for de novo grants. So that would be the way that you would do it. So, and it's really, really important. We put this actually in one of our blogs and in our instructions, that if you're going through that particular NOCI, there's a box called Box 4B where you put that NOCI number. If you don't put that NOCI number, it's just another grant, and we're not going to think about treating it in any kind of special way. So by putting in that number, that's how we know that you're responding to that particular announcement, and that will help us think through how we should review and consider funding your proposal. Great.
Now I know to say NOCI. That's learn something new every day, huh? Okay, let's see. The next question, maybe Jody, you could deal with this one. Is there any chance for an extension funded for postdocs who are on an NCE of an R01 to be able to finish their project and not lose out on the downtime?
So the answer to this is complicated. So for those institutes that are funded by the emergency supplemental funds, so they're getting emergency supplemental money, those 6 NCATS, NHLBI, NLM, the Common Fund, NIAID, NIEHS, those institutes can fund their parent awards who are in a no-cost extension. For all of the others, you need to apply before the end of the active project period, even if it ends tomorrow. If the application gets in today, you will technically get your award while you're in a no-cost extension, but we have to receive the application before you slip into the no-cost extension. Does that make sense? There will be later other opportunities to recoup losses when you've slipped into a no-cost extension, but it's not to do science, like I think this question is referring to.
Yeah.
So it's complicated. But so call the PO and find out how to get the best help and the most help you can get.
Yeah. So just contact people, and we're here to help you, I think is the general message there. So the next question here I have not seen before. So maybe all of the NSF people or anyone who knows anything about this could chime in if they have an answer. So the question is, with many working from home, can the NSF talk about compute resources such as high performance grid clusters available for use for those on NSF funding? Are resource allocations requests on these computing resources being expedited in their review during this time, even if the research is non-COVID related? I don't know.
I can start saying something.
Okay.
So there is a last month, a high performance computing consortium was constituted. And this consortium is bringing forth resources from NSF supported supercomputing, IBM, other companies to bring to bear all the computing resources for the community to use, and particularly for COVID-related research. So the first part of your question, you have access to a lot of computing resources. They are accepting applications, and they are definitely expediting review and response to COVID-related research. As far as non-COVID-related research is concerned, this is a good point that a lot of people are sitting at home and doing computing research. I can forward this question onward, but I don't think that thought has been given to expediting non-COVID research as requests as well. But you can understand that definitely a lot of time and effort is going to make sure that COVID-related research is given priority. So yes, resources are available. Again, on the main NSF information page, there is a link to harnessing computing power, and that will take you to the consortium page as well.
Yeah, thank you for bringing up that question. This is something we can think about. I think it hasn't really entered into our sphere of thinking about our response yet. So thank you. So the next one, maybe Jody, you could address this since it's again about K99s. It says, hello, I'm a K99 ROO awardee, and unfortunately my job offers were withdrawn. Oh, I'm sorry. That's unfortunate due to the COVID crisis. Can I apply for a supplement, and how soon should I apply, or how soon should I submit this application?
So you can definitely have an extension. I think that as far as getting an extension with funds to continue more work, that will be a conversation with the program official. So, assuming the work is completed and they just need more time, they can go into no-cost extension without any permission if they still have funding available. But to get additional funding, I think they should call the program official.
All right. Okay, so the next two questions have to do with no-cost extensions. Maybe Manju, you could address these. And it says that the first one, well, the second one actually says, what does a no-cost extension mean? So maybe you could just go over that. But then on top of that, maybe you could answer, while we can apply for no-cost extensions, will there be a way to apply for supplemental funding to cover costs of PhD students or other staff where salaries are provided, but work has not progressed in the lab.
Okay, so a no-cost extension is where you apply for an extension to the award period, but you're not requesting any additional funding. So that's what that means. It doesn't cost us anything for you to have more time to do your work, to complete the project. When you apply for a no-cost extension, the important thing is to apply in time, whether it's for the first year a grantee approved extension for the NSF, I'm speaking specifically. And again, it's important that you apply before your award period ends. We request, actually you should not conflate the no-cost extension request with a supplemental funding request, because with respect to supplemental funding, you've already heard that we're trying to take a broader view of how to allocate these equitably. So at this time, if you think you will need supplemental funding, definitely make sure and time to complete your project, definitely ask for the no-cost extension, and then separately contact your program officer about the request for additional funds.
Okay, anyone else want to add anything to that? No, okay. So let's move on to the next one. I'm sorry, I didn't.
It's the NIH RO3 grant.
Yes. Okay. So Michael, maybe you could address this one. It says, the question is, I'm a PI on an NIH RO3 grant and my university stopped bench research. In your FAQ, you note that recipients must contact the funding IC to alert them of any effects on the NIH funding research. Should I email my contact or go through a formal channel? Thank you.
Well, I'd say yes, meaning both. We understand, of course, that the grants management office at your institution may be slowing down right now, but it is, as before, I guess we can say this over and over again, please contact your program official and let your program official know what's going on. But it is also helpful to go through official channels so that, well, for one thing, that your office's sponsored research knows what's happening and that appropriate documentation that is necessary between your office's sponsored research and our grants management officials can take place. I think Joanna made a comment at the beginning about document. We know that it's hard to do, but as much as possible, you do want to work through your official business offices because that minimizes the risk that something really bad will happen later.
Okay, great. All right, so we've got about 6 more minutes and it looks like we have 11 questions in the Q&A box. Hopefully we can get through most of them. And so if you have any questions, just type them into the Q&A box and we'll try to get to it. The next question is a little bit of an overlap, so I think I'm going to just answer this and we'll move on to the following one. So the next question is, are there any plans to provide salary supplements to continue supporting trainees through the no-cost extension period? And we've answered similar questions to this already, that we don't see any new funds coming through right now, and these have to be allocated in a way that's fair to everyone. And so right now we don't see that that's going to be happening, but you can that may change in the future. We're not sure. Okay, so the next question is, and it's again about K99, so maybe we'll go to Jody for this. Will the suspension of bench activities due to the pandemic be taken into account for K99 applications timing? This would be particularly important considering we don't know how long the suspension will last.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're intending to extend time. This is the community that we're most worried about, is the junior investigators.
Okay. Let's move on to the next question. And maybe Michael can address this. Does NIH allow for collaborative research on COVID-19 among different countries? May I tie up with overseas researchers?
Yes, We always allow and, in fact, encourage collaboration. But that is something that we do need to know about. And I know we're running out of time, but there are formal processes by which that kind of collaboration will be documented, and certain pre-approvals may be necessary if significant parts of the project are occurring outside of the United States.
I'll add that the same is true for the NSF as well. But we also have certain agreements in place with some countries that, for example, with Israel, where we are accepting research proposals related to COVID, as is the sister agency in Israel. So again, contact your the appropriate program officer in that area.
Great, thank you. Okay, I think this is probably a question for NIH. Is the allocation of funds to COVID research predicted to affect pay lines for non-COVID research proposals? Maybe for NIH.
That's a good question. Probably not, or maybe to a relatively minor degree. We have received a fair amount of money, a lot of money, in supplemental funds that specifically goes to coronavirus research. It is true that a number of our institutes have identified COVID-19 as being high priority, and so that means that there may be some opportunity costs. But I don't see any really major shifts in pay lines because of this.
All right, great. Okay, here's another question dealing with NIH supplements. Can you provide an overview of the application for administrative supplements for existing active grants? Instructions indicate that a 6-page research plan is required. So should this plan include aim, significance, and innovation? What's the typical content of this document? Should the PO associated with the parent grant approve the application first? Sounds like there's a lot of different components of this and probably can't go over all of them now. So maybe a short answer would be best. Jody, could you address that?
Yeah. So first thing I'm going to say is usually these are in response to a NOCI, and NOCIs often have specific instructions, so please follow them. So the answer in general to these questions is yes, but please look to see what the NOCI says. And use box 4B, don't forget.
Okay, Michael, do you have anything to add to that? No. Okay. So the next question, I guess this is again about the pay lines, about whether there's so for non-COVID-19 coronavirus research, is there an expectation for cuts on funded grants and tighter pay lines on submitted grant applications? And I think the answer to that right now is we have no expectation that that's going to be happening. So we've got only 1 minute, so I'm just going to scan through. Well, maybe I'll just take the next question here, and it's about postdoc positions. So I'm currently looking for a postdoc. Will the funding from NSF and NIH disease stop next year, which may cause a hardship of postdoc recruiting? When do you think a good time for PhDs to graduate to find a position in academia right now? Well, that's a good question. And Joanne, maybe you can...
So none of us know, none of us have a crystal ball to know what the funding to the agencies will be like next year. We certainly are not anticipating major cuts to the agencies. So I think that my advice to you would be, if you're ready to graduate, you should graduate. And you can look for your position now that, at least from our perspective, that we intend to continue to move forward as we have in supporting research both in this area and broadly, and continue to support postdocs to the same or potentially greater degree than we already have.
Okay, and so I think we're at the end of our time here for this workshop. We really, we've had a great response. I think we've had over 540 different participants at different times. And we'd all like to thank you for asking questions and giving us the opportunity to help you out. So again, a last comment is that if you didn't have your question answered, please contact a program officer at NSF or someone at NIH. Michael, do you have any final comments?
I have to go, but thank you very much and all best wishes. Stay well, stay healthy, and stay safe.
Okay, Joanne?
I couldn't agree more.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.